The house of Russell M. Nelson was silent, but it wasn't an ordinary silence. It was the kind of stillness that carried both peace and heartbreak. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. Inside, time seemed to pause. For months his health had been fading, but his spirit never wavered. Even in weakness, his smile stayed gentle, his words soft, his faith unshaken. What happened next would move millions around the world and remind us all what true devotion looks like. Stay with me, because this story will touch your soul in ways you didn't expect. To anyone looking from the outside, he still seemed like the same strong, gentle man everyone admired. But his wife, Wendy Nelson, began to notice something different, something quiet, almost sacred. It was as if he carried within him a silent awareness that his journey on this earth was nearing its final chapter. Each passing day, Russell became more intentional. He slowed down not out of weakness, but out of reverence. He started noticing the beauty in life's smallest details, the laughter of his grandchildren echoing through the house, the golden sunlight spilling across the living room floor, the soft hum of old hymns drifting in the background. To Wendy, it felt like he was soaking in every second, treating each one like a precious gift he didn't want to let slip away. And then there were his words. He would often smile and say, almost like a whisper from the soul, "Every day is a gift." The way he said it carried a weight, a tenderness that stayed with Wendy long after the words faded. It wasn't just a phrase anymore, it was a message, a quiet acceptance that his time here was limited. He began showing more affection than ever before, holding his grandchildren's hands a little longer, offering blessings with an extra touch of warmth, and telling his children how proud he was of them, over and over again. His eyes lingered on their faces, not just looking at them, but memorizing them like a man who knew these moments would soon become memories he'd carry into eternity. Though he never spoke the words out loud, anyone who truly knew him could feel it in their spirit. Russell M. Nelson was preparing for a goodbye only his heart understood. One quiet evening, as the sun melted into the horizon and painted the sky with gold and violet, Russell sat in his favorite chair by the window, the same spot where he often prayed and reflected. Wendy soon joined him, gently carrying a cup of warm tea. She sat beside him, and for a long time they said nothing. The house was still. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock, marking the rhythm of a life that had been full, faithful, and extraordinary. Then, breaking the silence, Russell took a deep, steady breath. His voice came out softer than she'd ever heard before. "Wendy," he began, pausing as if to hold the weight of the moment. "I can feel it. My time here is drawing short." Her heart sank. She had sensed it too, deep down, but hearing him say it made it real. Her eyes shimmered with tears she tried to hold back. He reached for her hand, that familiar, reassuring touch, and smiled faintly. "Don't be afraid," he whispered. "I'm not. I've lived my purpose." "Afraid," he whispered. "I'm not. I've lived my purpose. The Lord has given me peace, and when my moment comes, it won't be an ending. It will simply be the beginning of something greater." Wendy gripped his hand tighter, her voice trembling as she whispered, "I'm not ready to let you go." He looked into her eyes, calm and unwavering, and said with quiet conviction, "You won't lose me, Wendy. Not really. A piece of me will always be with you during your quiet times and prayers. And I want you to keep this in mind. Love is eternal. What we have created together will endure." When Wendy's eyes eventually began to well up with tears, she leaned in and put her head on his shoulder. Their silence was more powerful than words at that precise time. It was a sacred encounter between two souls whose relationship was forever, even though they knew their time together was coming to an end. Russell's days were peaceful, methodical, and filled with silent preparation after that night. He started leaving behind small fragments of himself without ever saying anything, as if he were meticulously planning a departure that no one could witness. He wrote letters by hand for hours at his desk. Each one contained a heartfelt message, blessings for his grandchildren, words of support for his kids, and displays of affection that would endure long after he was gone. His lines were straightforward but impactful, written for his grandchildren. "Never lose sight of who you are and that I have faith in you." He left a note of appreciation for his children, expressing his pride in the lives they had created. Additionally, he secretly pinned a note to Wendy that he never showed her, and that included the most intimate details of his heart. It was only discovered after he had left. Wendy frequently caught a glimpse of him lost in contemplation, his eyes hazy with passion, his pen gliding slowly across the paper. She didn't inquire about his writing. It was sacred, she knew. Instead, understanding that it was part of his preparation, she gave him that quiet space. He would occasionally sit down with a little notebook and jot down passages of scripture or his favorite hymns while muttering the words to himself. He seemed to be amassing all of his faith strength and leaving it as a legacy. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary to the outer world, but every gesture had significance for Wendy. His words, pauses, and notes all felt like tender farewells that were expertly laced with love. It wasn't until the evening that everything felt different. Outside, the sky had darkened, the stars were glowing dimly, and within the home, everything was quiet. Russell lay in bed, breathing more slowly now, but the same serene light that had gotten him through life was still warm in his eyes. Wendy was sitting next to him, clutching his hand tenderly and refusing to let go, not even for a second. For years she had supported him through both happiness and hardship. However, this evening felt unique. It seemed definitive. Oddly enough though, it felt heavy with love rather than fear. "Wendy, time has come," Russell said in a quiet but steady whisper as he slowly moved his head in her direction. Tears welled up in her eyes as her heart fell. As though rejecting it, she shook her head slightly and tightened her hold on his hand. But before she could say anything, he murmured, "Don't cry," with a gentle grin. "This is not the end. It's merely the subsequent phase. I'll be with you forever." For a little period, he closed his eyes and muttered a final prayer. Words that only God could hear, words of thanksgiving, words of submission. "You will never be alone," he replied, turning back to Wendy with his final effort. "Keep it in mind." At last, Wendy let her tears flow freely. Forcing a shaky smile, she said back, "I will carry your love forever." Shortly thereafter, his respiration became slower and softer until it finally subsided into quiet. But that quiet wasn't meaningless. It was so serene, as though heaven itself had opened its arms to embrace him. Even in the silence, Wendy felt his presence and stayed by his side, clutching his hand long after he had left. Friends, family, and innumerable others whose lives he had impacted gathered to pay tribute to him in the days that followed. But among all the voices, one was particularly noticeable: Wendy, his wife. Her words had a weight that was both tragic and uplifting when she eventually spoke in public. Russell was aware. Softly, she eventually spoke in public. Russell was aware. Softly, she started. He confronted his impending death with a calmness that defies explanation. Death did not frighten him. He embraced it like coming home. "And in those last days, Dad gave us his love, which is the best present anyone can give." As she continued, her voice became more steady. "He left us with prayers, letters, and blessings. More importantly, though, he gave us an example, an illustration of how to love without boundaries, live with gratitude, and face adversity with bravery." Even his death was a prayer, and his life was a sermon. "He assured me that I would never be alone, and I believe him, because love like his never dies," she said, pausing with "Love like his never dies," she said, pausing with tears in her eyes. "It only gets more powerful." Her homage extended well beyond that room's boundaries. Millions of people soon heard about it from all across the world. Her comments, according to viewers, were a beautiful homage that warmed their hearts and served as a reminder of the value of loyalty and faith. Russell M. Nelson's presence seemed to linger even after his death, in the peaceful nooks and crannies of the house, in his written words, and in the hearts of people who cared for him. Although his absence was greatly missed, his legacy brought brightness into the void. The strength he left behind was just as real to Wendy as the pain. Every blessing he had given her and every letter he had sent felt like a thread binding them together. She often thought of his last words in the quiet of the night: "You'll never be by yourself." And for some reason she thought it was true. He was still in love. It survived. Russell was more than a spouse, father, or grandfather to his family. He provided the world with direction, stability, and a real-life example of faith. He served as a reminder to live life with thankfulness and to face the last chapter with calm rather than fear. His final days were not the only part of his story. It was about his kindness, humility, and unwavering faith in God, and how he lived each day in front of them. The true gift he left behind was that Russell's impact ultimately lay in his ability to touch people's hearts as much as in his accomplishments. His death evolved beyond a simple loss. It became a statement, a timeless reminder that love never dies, faith endures, and when life is lived with meaning, it is lovely even in its final moments. His spirit thus continues to inspire, even as his body relaxes. Even if his earthly journey is over, his legacy endures forever. Okay,